Let's go Browns! There's some chaos going on in Cleveland, and we need to talk about it. Before we dive into today's big news, make sure to hit that like button and join us so you never miss an update. There's a lot going on in Cleveland right now, and trust me, you don't want to miss out on any of these discussions. Now, let's start by talking about the chaos surrounding Myles Garrett, Jimmy Haslam, and the Browns' upcoming moves in free agency. So here's the bombshell. Browns owner Jimmy Haslam reportedly refused to meet with Myles Garrett after the star pass rusher requested a trade. Yes, you heard that right. One of the best defensive players in the NFL, a guy who has been the face of this defense for years, wanted a meeting with ownership to discuss his frustrations, and Haslam shut the door in his face. Naturally, this set off a firestorm of criticism from analysts across the league. James Palmer of Underdog Fantasy didn't hold back, pointing out how ridiculous this situation is. He said, instead of meeting with him and maybe trying to change his mind or start a more friendly dialogue, you refuse, while proclaiming how important he is to your future and how much you value him. Super Bowl champion Chris Canty also weighed in, blasting Haslam for his handling of the situation. Putting up this obstacle, where Myles Garrett can't talk to the highest level of leadership within the franchise, where he's already in a position where he doesn't trust the team, is the bad way to do it. And then, there's this. Laquan Jones from NFL Network took things to another level, saying that playing in Cleveland is like serving a prison sentence. Seriously, he tweeted, "We all know Cleveland is a prison sentence. Nobody goes or stays there for happiness. Hashtag free Myles Garrett." Now, I don't know about you, but when analysts start talking about your franchise like that, it's not a good look. And it gets worse. ESPN Cleveland's Chris Oldak tore into Haslam, questioning the logic behind his decision. If the end goal really is to keep Myles here, what do you think actually helps that? Does not taking a meeting help that? And he's absolutely right. If the Browns truly want to keep Garrett, ignoring his concerns is the worst possible move. But let's be honest, Cleveland's front office hasn't exactly been known for making smart decisions, have they? This whole situation raises a bigger question about player treatment in Cleveland. Over the years, we've seen star players frustrated with the organization. Whether it's Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr., or now Myles Garrett, the common denominator seems to be a disconnect between the front office and the locker room. If Haslam doesn't change his approach, how can the Browns expect to attract and retain top talent? Meanwhile, let's shift gears to free agency because there's a big rumor going around about the Browns running back situation. ESPN's Stephania Bell believes the Browns will not only hold on to Nick Chubb, but also bring in J.K. Dobbins. Now, this is interesting because, for months, we've been hearing that the Browns were going to part ways with Chubb, mainly due to his injuries and cap hit. But Bell thinks otherwise, saying, the Browns will sign running back J.K. Dobbins and find a way to retain Nick Chubb. He would not only fit the Browns' offensive philosophy, but his explosiveness, yes, it's still there, would provide something they were missing in 2024. That last part is key, explosiveness. The Browns' offense was missing that in 2024, and let's be real, the quarterback situation hasn't helped either. Bell believes that with Chubb likely having a weak market in free agency, Cleveland could get him back on a team-friendly deal. As for Dobbins, when he's healthy, he's dangerous. The issue? He's struggled with injuries his entire career. If the Browns sign him, they would absolutely need a backup plan, whether that's keeping Jerome Ford in the mix or drafting another back. And let's not forget about the quarterback situation. The Browns still don't have a clear answer at QB, and with Deshaun Watson's contract eating up a massive chunk of the salary cap, the team doesn't have much flexibility. If the Browns want to compete, they need to find a way to put a solid supporting cast around whoever is under center. That means making smart free agency moves, keeping key players happy, and fixing the glaring holes in the roster. This offseason is shaping up to be one of the wildest we've seen in Cleveland in a long time. You've got a star player wanting out, an owner who won't even take his call, and a potential shakeup in the backfield. And let's not even get started on the quarterback situation, which is a whole other mess we'll break down in another video. But now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about Haslam refusing to meet with Myles Garrett? Is this the final straw for Garrett in Cleveland? And how do you feel about the idea of keeping Chubb while adding Dobbins? Do you think this front office is capable of making the right moves to push this team into serious playoff contention? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now we need to talk about the Nick Chubb situation. After 7 seasons in Cleveland, Chubb is set to become a free agent, and while it's tough to swallow, it's not exactly surprising. We're talking about one of the most beloved Browns players of this era. Only Jim Brown and Leroy Kelly have more rushing yards and touchdowns in franchise history. Chubb has been a leader in the locker room, a force on the field, and a pillar in the community. But football is a business, and after back-to-back injury-plagued seasons, paying him a significant amount of money isn't the smartest move for the franchise. So what happens now? Chubb will test the market, looking for a team willing to give him guaranteed money and a real shot at playing time. Maybe, after a full offseason of recovery, he'll prove that he's still got plenty left in the tank and turn 2025 into a resurgence year. But here's the problem: running backs aren't exactly a hot commodity in today's NFL, especially ones with a history of injuries. Teams are hesitant to pay big money for players at this position, and if the market isn't strong, the Browns could potentially bring him back on the right deal. According to ESPN's Tony Grossi, Chubb's best chance of staying in Cleveland would come down to whether there's simply no demand for him. Grossi said it would be that there's just no market for him in free agency and he comes back and pretty much plays like he did last year for the minimum. And let's be honest, Chubb didn't look like himself in 2024. His 3.3 yards per carry were a major drop from his career average, and he wasn't producing at the same level we've come to expect. On top of that, this year's draft class is stacked with talented, younger, and cheaper running backs, making it even harder for Chubb to find a strong market. The Browns could very well look to the draft to rebuild the backfield, adding one or even two running backs. They need to give whoever is under center in 2025 the best possible support system, and a strong run game is crucial for that. It's possible that Chubb returns, but if it happens, it will likely be after the draft and only if the Browns see him as a low-cost insurance option. Now, speaking of the quarterback position, that brings us to the next major storyline: the Browns' interest in a young QB prospect. Cleveland needs a long-term answer at quarterback, and even more importantly, they need a cost-effective one. That's why the 2025 NFL Draft is so crucial for this team. The problem? This year's QB class isn't exactly elite. There are major question marks surrounding many of the top prospects, including Shedeur Sanders. Reports have painted Sanders as a brash and arrogant player, raising concerns about whether he's the right guy to lead a franchise. But according to Cleveland.com's Mary Kay Cabot, the Browns don't see it that way at all. Cabot's report suggests that the Browns have been high on Sanders for a while now. In fact, they see his confidence and personality as strengths rather than red flags. They've reportedly met with him multiple times, and each meeting has only solidified their belief that he could be their guy. That said, Cleveland is also intrigued by Miami's Cam Ward. The Browns might feel comfortable with either QB depending on who's available when they're on the clock. But let's be real, drafting a quarterback is always a gamble. Sanders has talent, but his college tape shows a guy who took a lot of sacks and didn't always face elite competition. Do the Browns really want to hand him the keys to the franchise? At the end of the day, this is going to be one of the most important off-seasons in recent Browns history. Whether it's deciding on Nick Chubb's future or picking the next potential franchise quarterback, these choices will have massive implications. So now, I want to hear from you. Should the Browns bring back Nick Chubb if the price is right? And what do you think about Shedeur Sanders? Do you believe he could be the future of this franchise, or should the Browns look elsewhere? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any updates. Go Browns!